Okay, so we've got some super interesting stuff to dig into today. A bunch of you have sent in some great questions about thinking faster and speaking with more confidence.
No.
So what we're going to do today is go through that material and really try to pull out like the most practical stuff, things you can actually use.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I think those are skills a lot of people want to improve.
Totally.
And we got a great resource to work with, a YouTube video from the Speak English with Class channel. It's one of their English Leap podcast episodes. It's called How to Think Fast, Speak Smart.
Perfect.
And the hosts, Evan and Aaron, have some really relatable experiences. You know, the stuff that I think we've all been through at some point. And they give some really solid advice that I think we can unpack and make really useful.
Okay, so one of the things that really resonated with me when I was watching the video was right at the beginning. Aaron was talking about how, and I'm sure you felt this too, you're in a conversation, just like a normal everyday chat,
Yeah.
and your brain just kind of like seizes up. She was talking about a conversation with a colleague, and somebody asked her a really simple question,
Right.
and the words just wouldn't come out.
Oh, it's the worst, isn't it? It's like you know the answer. It's
Mhm.
like it's in there somewhere. But it's like trying to find a file on your computer and you just can't remember where you put it or what you even named it.
Yes.
And the thing that Evan and Aaron talk about that's really interesting is that it's not just that moment of awkwardness. It actually like eats away at your confidence. You
Sure.
start to doubt yourself, and other people might pick up on that hesitation and misinterpret it.
Oh, totally. And they actually brought up some research, I think it was from the Harvard Business Review,
Oh, right.
about how the way that you speak, like how clearly and confidently you speak, actually impacts how credible and influential people perceive you to be.
Yeah, it makes perfect sense. You know, if you
Yeah.
meet somebody and they're super articulate and can get their ideas across clearly and without hesitation, you kind of naturally pay more attention and take them more seriously.
Totally.
Okay.
And that's where the point about the difference between thinking fast and speaking fast is really important, I think.
Oh, absolutely. It's so tempting to think that, like, just being able to talk really fast means you're smart or a quick thinker.
Hmm.
But Evan and Aaron really hit the nail on the head when they said it's clarity of thought and expression that really matters. You know, they had this great analogy about driving.
Right.
You don't have to like put your foot down on the accelerator to get where you're going quickly. You just need to know the clearest route.
Right.
And in communication, that best route is, using language that's well structured and easy to follow.
Yeah, it's about being effective and not just fast.
Totally.
Okay, so we know why it's important to be able to think quickly and speak clearly. But what are some of the things that kind of get in the way? Like, what are the mental hurdles that make it hard to respond smoothly and confidently?
Well, the video points out a few major culprits. First off, overthinking.
Ugh.
We've all been there. You're writing an email, or, like Aaron said, you're rewriting a text message for like the sixth time.
Oh, God, yeah.
And in a live conversation, that inner critic that's trying to perfect everything you say can really slow you down.
Hmm.
You're so busy trying to craft the perfect response that you miss your chance to actually say anything.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I've definitely like talked myself out of saying things because I was overthinking it.
Right.
And then there's the fear of making mistakes. And Erin talked about this from her experience learning Spanish. That worry that you're not going to say it exactly right or that you'll sound stupid,
Mm-hmm.
that can be so paralyzing. But like they said in the video, and I think this is so important to remember, mistakes are just part of learning.
Yeah.
Every time you mess up, it's actually an opportunity to get better.
Totally. If you hold back because you're scared of making a mistake, you're never going to get the practice you need to improve. Another common challenge they discussed was mental blocks. You know when you get put on the spot and your mind just goes completely blank?
Oh,
And their example of like trying to remember your favorite movie was so perfect. It's like, you have a list of movies you love, but suddenly you can't remember a single one.
it's like your brain just crashes.
Yeah, exactly.
And of course, for a lot of people listening, there's the added challenge of a language barrier.
Yeah.
If English isn't your first language, that you've got this extra layer of complexity.
Absolutely.
You have to translate what you're hearing and then formulate your response in real time.
Right. And Evan and Aaron did a good job of acknowledging that that can make things much harder.
Right. But the good news is that even though these challenges can feel really big, they're not impossible to overcome.
Absolutely. Evan and Aaron offer some really practical strategies, the
Mhm.
things you can start using right away to get past those hurdles.
Yeah, to help you think faster and speak more effectively.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's dig into those strategies. The first one they talked about was staying calm under pressure. And this feels so fundamental because, like they said, when we get stressed or anxious, our bodies go into like fight or flight mode.
Yeah.
And while that's great if you're actually in danger,
Mm.
it's not exactly helpful when you're trying to think clearly.
No. And what's really interesting is the science behind it. When your body goes into that fight or flight mode, it releases all this adrenaline.
Right.
And that shifts your focus away from things like language processing and rational thought.
Oh, right.
Aaron had a perfect analogy. You know the quiz show contestant who clearly knows the answer but freezes up under the pressure of the spotlight? That's a classic example.
And she had her own personal story about giving a presentation and completely blanking,
Oh, yeah.
which I think we've all been there.
Oh, totally. Like all your carefully prepared notes and talking points just vanish into thin air.
So what does she say you can do?
She had a really simple but powerful tip. Take a deep breath.
Okay.
It might sound almost too simple, but that pause, that conscious act of breathing in and out can really help break that cycle of panic and give your nervous system a chance to reset.
Right.
It brings you back to the present moment,
Okay.
away from all those anxious
It's
thoughts.
like a little mini moment of calm that you can create for yourself.
Exactly.
I love that. Sometimes the simplest things are the most powerful.
Mhm.
Okay, so the second strategy they talked about was anticipating responses.
Right.
And this feels like a more proactive approach to communication.
Yeah, exactly. It's about shifting from being purely reactive in conversations to being more prepared, like a chess player thinking a few moves ahead.
Okay.
And the funny thing is we actually do this all the time without even thinking about it. Like in Evan's example of ordering coffee.
Right.
You've heard those same questions so many times that you already know what you're going to say.
Mm-hmm.
So it's about applying that same kind of forward thinking to other situations.
Okay, so how can you do that? How can you anticipate responses in different situations?
Well, Evan and Aaron suggested thinking about things like job interviews.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
what are the typical questions they might ask?
Mm-hmm.
And even mentally rehearsing how you might answer them.
Right.
But it's also really helpful in more casual settings. Like if you're meeting somebody new, have a few open-ended questions ready or some things to talk about.
Right.
That can make those first interactions a lot smoother.
Yeah, it's like doing some of the work ahead of time.
Totally.
So your brain is free to focus on the actual conversation.
Exactly.
Okay, so even with the best preparation, there are still going to be times when you need a second to gather your thoughts.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
And that's where their next strategy comes in.
Yeah.
Time fillers.
Oh, I love time fillers. They're
Yeah.
so helpful.
So useful.
They're like little phrases you can use to get your brain a few extra seconds to catch up,
Mm-hmm.
you know? Things like, that's a great question, or let me think about that for a second.
Right.
It's like you're buying yourself some time without that awkward silence.
Yeah. And they gave some good examples, like Erin said she might use, I remember you from,
Right,
when she's trying to remember someone's name.
right.
It's like a way to keep the conversation going while your brain is catching up.
Exactly. And things like, well, it really depends, or I see what you mean, are also really useful. They show that you're listening and engaged, but they also give you that extra moment to think.
Yeah. The key is to use them naturally.
Absolutely.
Like if you overuse them or they
No.
sound forced, it's just going to sound weird.
Yeah, for sure.
But when you use them well, they're incredibly powerful.
Okay, another strategy they highlighted, which I find so helpful, is paraphrasing.
Oh, yeah.
So how does repeating back or rephrasing what someone said help you think faster?
What's really cool about paraphrasing is that it does two things at once. First, by saying what someone said back to them in your own words, you're actually processing the information,
Okay.
which can help you understand it better and even think of new ideas.
Right.
And second, it gives you time to think about what you want to say next.
Right. They had a good example of someone asking about a new project and you responding with something like, so the new project sounds like a challenge.
Right.
Just that little bit of paraphrasing buys you some time.
Yeah, and it's especially helpful in complex or sensitive conversations.
Absolutely.
You know, you can make sure you've understood what the other person is saying, which can prevent misunderstandings.
Right.
And that pause while you're rephrasing gives you a chance to choose your words carefully.
Right. Plus, it shows the other person that you're really listening.
Yeah, it's a win-win.
Eh.
Okay, let's talk about their next strategy. Thinking in simple structures.
Okay.
This one seems to be about focusing on clarity and being direct when you communicate.
Right. It's so tempting to try to sound smart by using complicated words and sentences, especially when you're feeling under pressure.
Mm-hmm.
But Evan and Aaron made a great point. Clear and simple communication is almost always more effective,
Totally.
both for the listener and for you.
Hmm.
They had this funny analogy of explaining something to a 5-year-old. You have to cut out all the jargon and just focus on the basic message.
Right.
And they gave some examples of simple sentence starters.
Hmm.
Things like, I think this because, or my opinion is.
Hmm.
Those can provide a good framework for your thoughts.
Right.
And it doesn't mean you're dumbing down your ideas.
Yeah.
It's just about structuring your thoughts in a way that's easy to follow.
Okay, so we can't talk about effective communication without talking about listening.
Oh, yeah. Listening is so important.
And they talked about active listening as one of their key strategies.
Right.
So how does being a good listener help you think faster and respond better?
Well, a lot of times when we're in a conversation, we're already thinking about what we're going to say next.
Hmm.
But when you really listen to someone, not just their words, but their tone and what they're really trying to say, it actually makes it easier to respond.
Okay.
Because your brain is already processing that information and making connections.
Right.
So you're ready to jump in with a more thoughtful response.
They had that analogy of watching a movie with subtitles.
Right.
Like if you miss a line of dialogue, the subtitles help you stay on track.
Exactly. And as Erin pointed out, active listening lets you build on what other people are saying. You don't have to come up with everything from scratch. You just take what's already been said and add to it.
Which makes things so much easier.
Yeah.
Okay, and finally they talked about something that might seem a bit unexpected, practicing improvisation.
Oh, yeah.
So how does improv fit in with thinking faster and speaking smarter?
Improv is all about responding in the moment without overthinking or censoring yourself.
Okay.
It forces you to be present and think quickly.
Right.
And the exercises they talked about, like word association, where you just say the first word that pops into your head, that can really help train your brain to make quick connections.
Yeah, I loved those simple examples like apple and then juice.
Right.
Or ocean and then waves.
Exactly. It's so basic, but it really shows how you can train your brain to be more spontaneous.
And then there's the storytelling exercise, where you have 30 seconds to make up a story based on a random word.
Right. That's a fun one.
Yeah.
And it's a great way to practice thinking on your feet.
So the main takeaway here is that, like any skill, thinking faster and speaking more effectively takes practice.
Absolutely.
So it sounds like the big message from Evan and Erin's discussion is that this ability to think quickly and speak confidently, it's not something you're just born with.
Yeah.
It's something you can learn and develop through practice and by using these strategies they've outlined.
Exactly. Staying calm, anticipating responses, using those time fillers, paraphrasing, thinking simply, listening actively, and practicing improvisation.
Right.
Those are all tools you can use to improve your communication.
So for everyone listening, I want you to think about which of these strategies really resonates with you.
Yeah.
And is there a situation coming up where you can actually try using it?
Mm-hmm.
Think about a time when you felt like you couldn't find the right words. How might you approach that differently now? I challenge you to experiment with these ideas and see what works for you.
I think you'll find that as you start using these techniques, your communication will become not just faster and smoother, but also clearer, more impactful, and ultimately more confident.
It's a journey.
Yeah.
And by using these strategies, you're taking big steps toward becoming a more effective communicator
Absolutely.
and feeling more confident in all areas of your life.
Yeah, I totally agree.
Awesome. Well, this has been really insightful. Thanks for joining me today.
It was my pleasure.
Thanks for listening, everyone. And good luck with your communication journey.
Yeah, good luck.